There are plants growing wild on the side of roads, along fence lines, and in abandoned lots all across America right now. Plants that produce fruit every single year. Plants that require no fertilizer, no pesticides, no replanting, and almost no care whatsoever. Plants that people walked past every day 100 years ago and ate from freely and that most people today can't even identify. These are the forgotten fruits, and they didn't disappear because they stopped working. They disappeared because the grocery industry had no use for them. You can't ship them cross-country. You can't wax them to look perfect on a shelf. You can't charge $4 each for them when they grow like weeds in your backyard for free. That is exactly why you need them. I'm going to show you 8 of these forgotten fruits today. And before we get to number 1, which is a fruit that was once called the most important food plant in North America, and that almost no one is growing today, I need you to stay until the end. Because number 1 alone could redefine how you think about food security for your family for the next half-century. Let's go. Number 8. Aronia berry, chokeberry. Let's start with the berry that the food industry tried to bury because it was too good. Aronia, also called chokeberry, is a native North American shrub that produces dense clusters of small, dark purple-black berries every single year without fail. It is cold hardy down to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. It tolerates wet soil, dry soil, poor soil, partial shade. It grows in zones 3 through 9. It has almost no serious pest or disease problems. And it produces heavily. A mature aronia bush can give you 15 to 20 pounds of berries per year from a plant that takes up maybe 5 square feet of ground. Here is why the food industry doesn't want you to know about this plant. Aronia berries have the highest antioxidant content of any fruit ever tested by the USDA. Higher than blueberries, higher than acai, higher than pomegranate. The ORAC score, the measure of antioxidant capacity, puts aronia at the top of every list. These berries are loaded with vitamin C, vitamin K, manganese, and compounds called anthocyanins that have been studied extensively for their effects on blood pressure, blood sugar, and inflammation. So why doesn't everyone grow them? Because raw aronia is astringent. It puckers your mouth. The industry decided it wasn't shelf-ready and moved on. But the people who know how to use it in juices, jams, syrups, smoothies, and wine have been growing it quietly for decades and collecting a free superfood harvest every fall. Plant aronia once. Expect heavy production starting year 3. That bush will outlive you and keep feeding whoever comes after you. In a world where supplements cost a fortune and fresh produce is getting more expensive every year, a shrub that produces the most antioxidant-dense food on earth for free, indefinitely, is not a gardening choice. It is a survival asset. Number 7. Mayhaw. Most people outside the American South have never heard of this one. That is a tragedy because the mayhaw is one of the most productive, most resilient, most overlooked fruit trees in North America. The mayhaw is a small tree in the hawthorn family, native to the wetlands and bottomlands of the southeastern United States. It produces small red apple-like fruits in spring-May, hence the name, that are explosively tart and perfect for jelly, syrup, and preserves. For generations, families across the South made mayhaw jelly every spring. It was a tradition, a ritual, a way of preserving a harvest that came like clockwork every year, whether you tended it or not. And then it was forgotten. Supermarkets took over. Young people stopped learning the old food traditions, and the mayhaw faded into the background. Here is what it can do for you. A mature mayhaw tree, which can live 50 to 75 years, produces 20 to 40 pounds of fruit per year in peak condition. It is self-fertile, meaning you only need one tree to get a harvest. It tolerates flooding. It tolerates drought once established. It survives hard freezes, and it asks almost nothing of you in return for decades of reliable spring fruit production. The window for harvest is short, 2 to 3 weeks in May, which is exactly why you want multiple trees, so you can process and preserve the harvest at scale. Mayhaw jelly stores for years. Mayhaw syrup over pancakes is something people who've tasted it never forget. This is a tree your grandchildren will still be harvesting from. Plant it now. Number 6. Pawpaw. Here is a fruit that genuinely sounds made up until you taste it. The pawpaw is the largest edible fruit native to North America. It grows wild from Nebraska to Florida, from the Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast. It was a staple food for Native American tribes for thousands of years. Lewis and Clark ate pawpaws during their expedition. George Washington reportedly served them as a favorite dessert at Mount Vernon. And then somehow this magnificent fruit almost completely disappeared from American food culture. The pawpaw tastes like a cross between a banana and a mango with hints of vanilla. The texture is custardy. The fruit is the size of a small potato or large egg. And a mature pawpaw tree which can live 40 to 50 years produces 30 to 70 pounds of fruit per year once it reaches full maturity around year 5. Why don't you see pawpaws in grocery stores? Because they ripen fast and bruise easily. They have a shelf life of 3 to 5 days at room temperature. That makes them essentially impossible to commercialize at scale. For the grocery industry, that is a problem. For the backyard grower, that is irrelevant. You pick them, you eat them fresh, you freeze the pulp, you make ice cream and jam and bread and smoothies. Pawpaws grow best in zones 5 through 9. They prefer partial shade when young. They need a partner plant, at least 2 different varieties for cross-pollination. But once they are established, they are indestructible. They spread by root suckers naturally, forming groves that produce more fruit every decade. You plant 2 trees once. 15 years later, you have a grove. 50 years later, your grandchildren are eating from it. This is American food heritage that almost no one is growing. That ends today. Number 5. Cornelian cherry. This one sounds like a dessert topping, but it is actually one of the toughest, most productive, most ancient cultivated fruits in the world. The Cornelian cherry is not actually a cherry. It is a species of dogwood Cornus moss that has been cultivated in Europe and Western Asia for at least 7,000 years. Ancient Romans ate it. It sustained populations through food shortages across the Mediterranean and Eastern Europe for millennia. And in the United States, it sits in nurseries and botanical gardens, largely ignored while people fight over space for apple trees that take twice as long to establish and produce half as reliably. Here is what the Cornelian cherry does. It blooms in late winter February, sometimes January before virtually any other flowering plant. That makes it one of the earliest nectar sources for bees and pollinators coming out of winter. And then, in late summer, it produces heavy clusters of small olive-shaped, bright red fruits that taste like a tart cherry mixed with cranberry. Incredible fresh, even better dried, juiced, or made into preserves. A mature Cornelian cherry shrub or small tree produces 15 to 30 pounds of fruit per year. It is cold-hardy to zone 4. It tolerates alkaline soil, clay soil, and urban pollution. It has virtually no pest or disease pressure in North American climates because it evolved in different conditions than our local pests. And it lives for well over 100 years. There are documented specimens in Europe that are centuries old and still producing. Plant it for yourself. Plant it for your children. Plant it for the great-grandchildren you will never meet, who will eat fruit from the same tree you put in the ground today. Number 4. Gumi berry. This one has a superpower that almost no other food plant on Earth shares. The Gumi eleagnus multiflora is an Asian shrub that produces sweet tart, red berries with a distinctive silvery speckle. The berries are loaded with lycopene, a powerful antioxidant most people only associate with tomatoes, and vitamin A, vitamin C, and essential fatty acids rare in fruit. It is a legitimately extraordinary food plant. But that is not the superpower. The superpower is nitrogen fixation. Gumi is one of a small group of fruiting plants that fixes atmospheric nitrogen directly into the soil. This means as it grows, it is fertilizing the ground around it. It is making the soil richer every year, not poorer. You do not need to add fertilizer. You do not need to amend the soil. The plant does it for you while simultaneously producing food. This is why permaculture designers call Gumi one of the most valuable multifunction plants in existence. A mature Gumi shrub produces 10 to 20 pounds of berries per year. It is cold-hardy to zone 4. It tolerates poor, dry, and disturbed soils where other fruit plants fail. It begins producing fruit in year 2 or 3 from planting much faster than most fruit trees, and because it improves its own growing conditions over time, it actually gets more productive as it ages, not less. Plant Gumi next to any fruit tree and watch the whole system thrive. It is not just feeding your family, it is feeding the soil that feeds everything else in your garden. Number 3. Serviceberry, Saskatoon. Here is the fruit that sustained entire civilizations across the North American continent for thousands of years, and that almost every American alive today has never tasted. Serviceberry, also called Saskatoon berry in Canada, Juneberry in the Midwest, and shadbush in the Northeast, is a native North American shrub and small tree that produces fruit so reliably, so abundantly, and in conditions so harsh that indigenous peoples across the continent depended on it as a primary food source. It was dried for winter storage, mixed into pemmican, the original survival food, and eaten fresh in enormous quantities during the brief summer harvest window. The berries look like blueberries but taste sweeter with a hint of almond from the seeds. They are rich in iron, manganese, magnesium, copper, and antioxidants, and the plant itself is virtually indestructible. Serviceberry is cold-hardy to Zone 2, meaning it survives in the Yukon, in Alaska, in northern Minnesota. It tolerates drought, clay soil, rocky hillsides, and urban heat. It grows in full sun and partial shade. A mature multi-stem serviceberry produces 10 to 25 pounds of fruit per year and can live for 40 to 50 years. And because it produces in late spring, May through June, depending on your zone, it fills the hunger gap between stored winter food and the main summer harvest. The fact that this plant is not in every American backyard is one of the great horticultural mysteries of our time. It is native, it is adapted, it is productive, it requires almost nothing, and it produces food reliably for half a century. If you live anywhere in zones 2 through 9, there is no reason not to plant serviceberry this season. Number 2. Mulberry. We are almost at number 1, and I need to be honest with you. Number 2 on this list is probably the single most underrated food tree in the entire country. And if you do not have one in your yard, you are leaving thousands of dollars in free food on the ground, literally, every single summer. The mulberry tree grows in every climate zone in the continental United States. It grows in the desert. It grows in the deep south. It grows in the upper Midwest. It grows in the Pacific Northwest. It produces so aggressively that cities across America have banned the planting of fruitless male varieties because the fruitful female trees drop so many berries that they stain sidewalks and become a nuisance. That is how productive this tree is. Cities tried to ban it because it makes too much food. A mature mulberry tree, and they can live 75 to 100 years, can produce 50 to 100 pounds of fruit per year. Some large established trees produce significantly more. The fruit is sweet, deep purple, rich in iron, vitamin C, vitamin K, and resveratrol. You eat it fresh. Dry it, freeze it, make jam, make wine, make syrup. It is one of the few fruits that processes well in every form. And the tree itself demands virtually nothing. No spraying, no special pruning, no intensive care. You plant it once, you give it some water while it establishes, and then you walk away. It takes care of itself, year after year after year. The reason mulberry is number 2 and not number 1 is simple. It is native to North America and Asia, not exclusively North American, and its production window is relatively concentrated. But if you plant nothing else from this entire video, plant a mulberry tree. The return on that single investment will feed your family every summer for the rest of your life. Number 1. Persimmon, American native. I told you number 1 was going to redefine how you think about food security. Here it is. The American persimmon, Diospyros virginiana, is a native tree that grows wild from Connecticut to Florida, from Kansas to Texas. Its name in the Algonquian language means _, _0_. But the people who gave it that name had been eating and depending on it for centuries before European contact. Early colonial settlers who survived brutal winters in Virginia and the Carolinas survived in part because of persimmon. It was called by early American naturalists the most important food tree on the continent. And today, almost no one grows it on purpose. Here is why it belongs at number 1. The American persimmon is one of the most cold-hardy, drought-resistant, pest-resistant, disease-resistant, and long-lived food trees in existence. It tolerates temperatures down to -25 degrees Fahrenheit. It grows in poor clay, rocky, or compacted soils where almost nothing else produces food. It requires no spraying, no fertilizing, no irrigation once established. A mature American persimmon tree can live 75 to 150 years and produce fruit the entire time. The fruit ripens in fall, October through December, depending on your location, after the first frost, which converts the tannins and transforms the flavor from astringent to intensely sweet. Think brown sugar mixed with apricot and cinnamon. A single mature tree can produce 50 to 75 pounds of fruit per year. You eat it fresh, dry it into fruit leather, ferment it, bake with it. The dried fruit stores for months. But here is what puts it at number 1 above everything else on this list. In a genuine food crisis, in a real collapse of the supply chain, in a period of economic devastation, in the kind of scenario that human history shows happens repeatedly and that we are being warned is coming, The American persimmon does not care. It does not need you. It does not need the grid. It does not need a hardware store or a nursery or an extension agent. It grows in the harshest conditions in this country and produces food every fall as reliably as the seasons themselves. You plant this tree today. In 10 years it is producing seriously. In 20 years it is a pillar of food security for your household. In 50 years your grandchildren are harvesting from it without even knowing why great-grandpa planted it, only that the fruit is extraordinary, and it never, ever fails. That is number one. That is the tree. Here is what I want you to understand after watching this. The food system we have today is not guaranteed. Prices are not going back down. Supply chains are not becoming more stable. And the families who planted these trees and shrubs 10, 20, 30 years ago, they are not worried. They have persimmons dropping in October. They have mulberries in July. They have aronia in August. They have a living pantry in their backyard that no inflation, no shortage, and no crisis can touch. You can be that family. But you have to start now. These 8 plants are not difficult to find. They are not difficult to grow. The only thing difficult about them is the decision to prioritize long-term thinking over short-term convenience, because these plants do not produce overnight. They ask you to invest in a future you are building for yourself, your kids, and the people who come after you. That is what this channel is about. Not panic, not doom. Real strategies, real plants, real food security. If this video gave you something valuable, hit subscribe. I release a new video every few days, and every single one is built the same way. This one was no filler, no fluff, just the information you actually need. And comment below, which of these 8 forgotten fruits are you planting first? I read every comment and I will reply. Let's build something that lasts.